My name is Angela Cole, and I'm 53 years old. I've lived through enough to know that trust is the foundation of any relationship, and once it cracks, everything crumbles. What I'm about to share with you changed my life forever, and honestly, I'm still processing it all. This story isn't just about finding a receipt. It's about discovering that the man I loved, the man I built a life with, was living a double life right under my nose. If you want to hear more stories like this, stories about hidden betrayals and the signs that exposed everything, make sure you hit that subscribe button right now. Join our community of over 1,000 viewers who refuse to ignore the red flags. Subscribe, turn on notifications, and let's uncover these hidden truths together. It started on a Tuesday evening in late September. My husband Marcus had been working longer hours than usual. He told me his company was going through a major restructuring, and as a senior manager, he needed to be there to guide his team through the transition. I believed him. Why wouldn't I? We'd been married for 27 years. We had 2 grown children, a beautiful home in suburban Chicago, and what I thought was an unshakable bond. That evening, Marcus came home around 8:30, which was earlier than he'd been arriving lately. He seemed tired. His shoulders slumped as he walked through the door. He kissed me on the cheek, the way he always did, and headed straight for the shower. Nothing seemed out of the ordinary. I was in the kitchen preparing a late dinner, something simple since I wasn't sure when he'd be home. While the pasta was boiling, I went to gather his clothes for the laundry. Marcus was particular about his work clothes. He always wanted them cleaned and pressed perfectly. As I picked up his gray suit jacket from the chair in our bedroom, I felt something in the inner pocket. It was unusual because Marcus rarely kept anything in that pocket. He was meticulous about emptying his pockets before putting his clothes away. I reached in and pulled out a folded receipt. At first, I wasn't even going to look at it. I almost tossed it straight into the trash. But something made me pause. Maybe it was intuition, or maybe it was the way Marcus had been acting lately. Slightly distant, always on his phone, constantly distracted. I unfolded the receipt. It was from a restaurant called Le Jardin, an upscale French bistro in downtown Chicago. The date on the receipt was from the previous Saturday, 2 days ago. That Saturday, Marcus had told me he was playing golf with his college buddy, Tom. The receipt showed a dinner for 2, with 2 glasses of expensive wine, an appetizer to share, 2 entrees, and a chocolate dessert. The total was $247. My hands started shaking. Marcus hadn't mentioned having dinner anywhere that Saturday. He'd come home around 6 in the evening, claiming the golf game had ended early because of the weather. I remembered that day clearly. I'd made pot roast, his favorite, and he'd eaten 2 servings, saying he was starving because he'd only had a protein bar after golf. But this receipt told a different story. The timestamp showed the meal had been served between 2:15 and 4:30 in the afternoon, right when he was supposedly on the golf course. I stood there in our bedroom, staring at that piece of paper, feeling my world tilt. 27 years of marriage, and I'd never had reason to doubt him. Sure, we'd had our rough patches like any couple. There were times when we argued about money, about the kids, about whose turn it was to compromise. But infidelity? That had never crossed my mind. I heard the shower turn off. My heart raced. Should I confront him immediately? Should I wait and gather more evidence? My mind was spinning with questions. Who was he with? How long had this been going on? Was this the first time, or had there been others? I quickly folded the receipt and slipped it into my own pocket. I needed time to think, to process, to decide my next move. Marcus emerged from the bathroom wrapped in his robe, his hair still damp. He smiled at me, that familiar smile I'd seen thousands of times before. "Smells good down there," he said, referring to the dinner I was making. "I'm starving." The irony of those words hit me hard. He'd said the exact same thing that Saturday, right after supposedly playing golf, but actually having a fancy $247 lunch with someone else. I forced a smile. "Dinner will be ready in 10 minutes. Why don't you get dressed and come down?" He nodded and walked to the closet. I left the room before he could see the tears forming in my eyes. I went back to the kitchen, mechanically finishing the dinner preparation while my mind raced through possibilities. I thought about our life together, searching for other signs I might have missed. Had there been clues all along that I'd been too trusting to see? We ate dinner together that night, making small talk about our days. Marcus complained about a difficult client and praised one of his junior managers who'd handled a crisis well. He seemed so normal, so genuine. If I hadn't found that receipt, I would never have suspected anything was wrong. That's what hurt the most. How easily he could sit across from me, look me in the eyes, and act like everything was fine. After dinner, Marcus settled into his recliner to watch the news while I cleaned up the kitchen. My phone was on the counter, and I pulled up the website for Le Jardin. It was indeed an upscale restaurant, the kind of place you'd take someone for a special occasion or a romantic date. Not the kind of place you'd grab a quick bite after golf. I looked at their menu online. The items on Marcus's receipt matched exactly. He'd ordered the pan-seared duck breast, which cost $48. The other entree was the lobster risotto, priced at $52. They'd shared the escargot appetizer and split a slice of chocolate ganache cake. The wine was a Bordeaux that cost $30 per glass. This wasn't a casual meal. This was intentional, intimate, expensive. Someone had put thought into this lunch. And that someone was my husband. I couldn't sleep that night. I lay next to Marcus, listening to his steady breathing, wondering who he'd been with. In the darkness, I made a decision. I wouldn't confront him yet. I needed to know more. I needed to understand the full picture before I decided what to do with this information. The next morning, Marcus left for work at his usual time, 7:15. I had the day off from my job as a school librarian. It was a teacher planning day, so the students weren't in. I'd planned to use the day to catch up on household tasks and maybe meet my sister for lunch. Instead, I found myself doing something I never thought I'd do. I started investigating my own husband. I began with his credit card statements. We had joint accounts, so accessing them wasn't difficult. I logged into our bank's website and started scrolling through the transactions from the past few months. I was looking for anything unusual, any charges that didn't match up with what Marcus had told me about his whereabouts. What I found made my stomach drop. There were multiple charges to Le Jardin, not just the one from Saturday, but 5 others over the past 3 months, all of them during weekday afternoons, times when Marcus should have been at work. Each charge was similar in amount, ranging from $180 to $260. But that wasn't all. There were charges to other restaurants too. A steakhouse in the Loop, an Italian place in River North, a sushi restaurant in Lincoln Park, all expensive, all during times when Marcus had told me he was working late or in meetings. Then I saw something that made my blood run cold. There were charges to a hotel. The Whitmore, a boutique hotel in downtown Chicago. 3 separate charges over 2 months, each for 1 night, each costing around $350. I felt like I couldn't breathe. This wasn't just a casual affair. This was systematic, planned, ongoing. Marcus had been living a double life for months, maybe longer. I needed to know who she was. I opened Marcus's laptop. He'd left it on the kitchen counter that morning, something he often did when he was running late. I knew his password. We'd always been open about things like that, or at least I thought we had been. I opened his email first. I scanned through his inbox, looking for anything suspicious. Most of it was work-related, boring corporate emails about meetings and deadlines. But then I saw an email from someone named Jennifer Hastings. The subject line was simply, "Yesterday." I clicked on it. My hands were trembling so badly I could barely control the mouse. Marcus, yesterday was perfect. I can't stop thinking about the way you looked at me over lunch. The Jardin is becoming our special place. I know we have to be careful, but these moments with you make everything else worth it. Can't wait until next week. Jay. The email was dated the Sunday after the receipt I'd found. Marcus had replied, Jay, you make me feel alive again. See you Tuesday. I sat there, staring at the screen, feeling like my entire world was collapsing. Jennifer Hastings. I repeated the name in my mind, trying to place it. Did I know her? Had Marcus ever mentioned her? I searched his email for her name. There were dozens of emails between them, going back 6 months. I started reading them chronologically, watching their relationship develop from professional to personal to romantic. The early emails were about work. Jennifer was apparently a consultant his company had hired for the restructuring project. They'd met in a meeting, and Marcus had been assigned as her main point of contact. The emails showed how their relationship had evolved. First, they were just friendly, discussing work over coffee. Then the emails became more personal, sharing details about their lives. Jennifer was divorced, no children, 45 years old. She'd moved to Chicago from Boston for this consulting job. By the 3rd month, the tone had shifted completely. They were making plans to meet outside of work. The emails became flirtatious, then overtly romantic. Marcus wrote things to her that he hadn't said to me in years. He called her beautiful, exciting, refreshing. He said she understood him in ways I never had. That last part cut deeper than anything else. I'd spent 27 years trying to understand Marcus, supporting his career, raising our children, building a home. And now he was telling another woman that I never really understood him? I found photos. Marcus had saved them in a folder buried deep in his documents. Pictures of him and Jennifer at restaurants, at the hotel, at a park. In every photo they looked happy, relaxed, like a couple in love. Marcus was smiling in ways I hadn't seen in years. He looked younger, lighter, free. There was one photo that broke me completely. It was a selfie they'd taken in the hotel room. Jennifer was wearing a white robe, and Marcus was shirtless. They were both smiling at the camera, his arm around her shoulders, her hand on his chest. They looked like honeymooners. I closed the laptop and sat at the kitchen table, crying. 27 years of marriage, reduced to this. My husband was in love with another woman. He'd been lying to me for months, sneaking around, spending our money on romantic dinners and hotel rooms while I cooked his favorite meals and did his laundry. I thought about all the times he'd come home late, claiming work emergencies. The weekends he'd said he was playing golf or meeting Tom for drinks. The business trips that maybe weren't just business. How much of our life together had been a lie? I called my sister Rebecca. She'd always been my rock, the person I turned to when things got tough. When she answered, I could barely get the words out through my tears. "Angie, what's wrong?" Her voice was immediately concerned. "It's Marcus," I managed to say. "He's having an affair." There was a sharp intake of breath on the other end. "What? Are you sure?" I found a receipt, and then I looked at the credit card statements and his emails. "Rebecca, he's been seeing her for months. They go to restaurants, they stay at hotels. He's been lying to me about everything." "Oh, Angie, I'm so sorry. Do you want me to come over?" "Yes, please." Rebecca arrived 20 minutes later. She lived close by in the next suburb over. She found me still sitting at the kitchen table, the laptop closed in front of me, tissues scattered around me. She hugged me tight, and I cried on her shoulder like I used to do when we were kids, and something hurt too much to handle alone. "Tell me everything," she said, sitting down next to me. I showed her the receipt, the credit card statements, the emails, the photos. She read through them with increasing anger, her jaw clenching tighter with each revelation. "That son of a—" she started, then caught herself. "Angie, I'm so sorry. You don't deserve this. After everything you've done for him, for your family." "What do I do?" I asked. "Do I confront him tonight? Do I wait? Do I hire a lawyer first?" Rebecca thought for a moment. "You need to protect yourself financially. Before you confront him, you need to document everything. Take screenshots of the emails, save copies of the credit card statements, make sure you have proof. Then you need to talk to a divorce attorney. Divorce. The word felt foreign in my mouth. I'd never imagined myself getting divorced. That happened to other people, not to me, not to us. I know it's scary, Rebecca said, squeezing my hand. But you can't stay with someone who's been lying to you like this. This isn't a one-time mistake. This is months of deliberate deception. She was right, and I knew it. But knowing it and accepting it were two different things. Part of me still wanted to believe this was all a nightmare, that I'd wake up and everything would be back to normal. Rebecca stayed with me for the rest of the day. We systematically went through Marcus's laptop and phone, which I found in his nightstand. I took screenshots of everything relevant, emailed them to myself from a new email account I created just for this purpose, and saved everything to a flash drive. We documented every suspicious charge on the credit cards going back a year. The evidence was overwhelming. This affair had been going on for at least 6 months, possibly longer. And it wasn't just about sex. The emails showed a deep emotional connection. Marcus and Jennifer talked about everything, shared their feelings, made plans for the future. He was building a relationship with her while maintaining a facade of a marriage with me. Around 4 p.m, Rebecca left to pick up her kids from school. I was alone again, sitting in the house I'd thought of as my safe haven, feeling like a stranger in my own life. I thought about our children. Michael was 25, working as an engineer in Seattle. Sarah was 22, in graduate school in New York. They were both doing well, building their own lives. How would they react when they found out their father had been cheating on their mother? Would they take sides? Would this destroy their relationship with Marcus? I thought about my own parents, married for 45 years before my father passed away. They'd had their struggles, but they'd stayed committed to each other. I'd always wanted that kind of lasting love. I thought I had it with Marcus. At 6:30, I heard Marcus's car in the driveway. My heart started pounding. I'd decided not to confront him yet, to wait until I'd talked to a lawyer. But I didn't know if I could sit across from him at dinner and pretend everything was okay. He came in through the garage door, as always, setting his briefcase down in the mudroom. "Hey, honey, I'm home," he called out. I was in the living room, trying to compose myself. "Hi," I called back, attempting to keep my voice steady. He walked in and immediately noticed something was off. "You okay? You look like you've been crying." I'd forgotten about my red puffy eyes. I scrambled for an excuse. "I was watching a sad movie earlier. You know how I get with those." He nodded, accepting the explanation without question. "What are we doing for dinner?" "I thought we could order pizza," I said. "I'm not really in the mood to cook." "Sounds good to me." We ordered pizza and ate it mostly in silence, Marcus scrolling through his phone while we ate. I wondered if he was texting Jennifer, making plans for their next rendezvous. The thought made me feel sick. After dinner, Marcus said he had some work to finish and went to his home office. I sat in the living room, staring at the television without really seeing it. My mind was spinning with everything I'd discovered, trying to figure out my next steps. Around 9 o'clock, Marcus came out of his office. "I'm going to bed early," he said. "Long day tomorrow." "Okay," I replied. "I'll be up in a bit." He kissed me on the forehead, a gesture that used to comfort me, but now felt like a betrayal. I waited until I heard him go upstairs. Then I pulled out my phone and started researching divorce attorneys in our area. The next few days were surreal. I went through the motions of normal life while secretly consulting with lawyers, organizing evidence, and planning my exit strategy. I met with 3 different attorneys before choosing one, a woman named Patricia Chen who specialized in high-asset divorces. She was straightforward and compassionate, walking me through what to expect. "You have solid evidence," Patricia told me during our first consultation. "The credit card statements, the emails, the photos. All of this shows a clear pattern of infidelity. In Illinois, while we're a no-fault divorce state, evidence of an affair can still impact the division of assets and potentially spousal support." I just want what's fair, I said. I'm not trying to destroy him. I just want to move on with my dignity intact. We'll make sure that happens, Patricia assured me. Meanwhile, Marcus continued his double life, seemingly oblivious to the fact that I'd discovered his secret. He went to work, came home, kissed me hello and goodbye, all while continuing to see Jennifer. I tracked his movements through the credit card statements, seeing new charges to restaurants and the hotel. One evening, about a week after I'd found the receipt, Marcus came home in an unusually good mood. He was humming as he walked in, and he actually suggested we open a bottle of wine and watch a movie together. Sure, I said, curious about this sudden change in demeanor. We settled on the couch with our wine, and Marcus put on an action movie I knew he liked. Halfway through, during a quiet scene, he turned to me. Angie, I've been thinking, he said, we should take a trip, just the two of us. Maybe go to that bed and breakfast in Michigan you're always talking about. I stared at him, stunned. Here he was, actively cheating on me, and now he wanted to plan a romantic getaway? The audacity of it took my breath away. Why now? I asked, trying to keep my voice neutral. He shrugged. I feel like we've been distant lately. I want to reconnect with you. You're important to me, Angie. You always have been. The words that might have once made my heart swell now just made me angry. He was lying to my face, trying to have it both ways. He wanted to keep me as his wife while also pursuing his exciting new relationship with Jennifer. Let me think about it, I said, turning back to the movie. That night, I lay awake again, but this time I wasn't crying. I was angry. How dare he suggest a romantic trip while he was sleeping with another woman? How dare he tell me I was important to him while spending hundreds of dollars on lavish dinners with his mistress? I decided it was time. I'd gathered enough evidence, consulted with my attorney, and prepared myself emotionally. It was time to confront Marcus. I chose a Friday evening. Marcus had come home from work at his usual time, and we just finished dinner. I'd barely eaten, my stomach in knots all day knowing what was coming. Marcus, we need to talk, I said as I cleared the dishes. Okay, he said, looking up from his phone. What's up? I took a deep breath and pulled the receipt out of my pocket. The original receipt I'd found, now worn from me carrying it around for days. I found this in your suit jacket, I said, placing it on the table in front of him. I watched the color drain from his face. He picked up the receipt, his hands trembling slightly, and stared at it. Angie, I can explain, he started. Don't, I cut him off. Don't insult me with lies. I know everything, Marcus. I've seen the credit card statements. I've read the emails. I've seen the photos. I know about Jennifer. I know about the hotels. I know about all of it. He looked like he'd been punched in the gut. He opened his mouth, closed it, then opened it again. How long have you known? Does it matter? I asked. How long has it been going on? 6 months? Longer? Angie, please let me explain. It's not what you think. It's exactly what I think, I said, my voice rising. You've been having an affair. You've been lying to me for months. You've been taking our money and spending it on romantic dinners and hotel rooms with another woman. While I've been home, cooking your meals, doing your laundry, believing every lie you told me. Marcus stood up, reaching for me. Angie, please, I love you. This thing with Jennifer, it's just what? I stepped back from him. Just a mistake? Just a phase? Just you deciding that 27 years of marriage wasn't enough? I never meant to hurt you, he said, and there were tears in his eyes now. I don't know how it happened. Jennifer and I, we just connected. She understands things about me, about the pressure I'm under at work, the stress. And I don't? I laughed bitterly. I've been married to you for 27 years, Marcus. I've supported every career move, every late night, every business trip. I raised our children, managed our home, and stood by you through everything. And I didn't understand you? That's not what I meant, he said desperately. You're twisting my words. No, I'm finally seeing the truth. You wanted excitement. You wanted to feel young again. You wanted someone new, and instead of talking to me about it, instead of trying to work on our marriage, you just went out and found it with someone else." Marcus sat back down, his head in his hands. "What do you want me to say? That I'm sorry?" "I am. I'm so sorry, Angie. I never wanted you to find out. I never wanted to hurt you." "You never wanted me to find out," I repeated. "So you were just going to keep lying. For how long? Forever?" He didn't answer. "I've already talked to a lawyer," I said quietly. "I'm filing for divorce." His head snapped up. "No, Angie, please. We can work through this. I'll end it with Jennifer. I'll do whatever it takes. Please don't throw away our marriage." "I'm not the one who threw it away," I said. "You did that when you decided to betray me, when you decided she was worth more than our vows, our history, our life together." "I made a mistake," he pleaded. "But it doesn't have to end everything. People get through this. We can get through this." I shook my head. "I don't want to. I deserve better than this, Marcus. I deserve someone who respects me enough to be faithful, someone who doesn't lie to my face every single day, someone who doesn't make me feel like a fool for trusting them." "You're not a fool," he said. "This is my fault, not yours." "You're right about that," I agreed. "This is entirely your fault. And now you get to live with the consequences." Marcus stood up again, desperation in his eyes. "Angie, please, I'm begging you. Give me another chance. Let me prove that I can do better." "You had 27 years to do better," I said. "You had every chance in the world. You chose this." I walked out of the kitchen and went upstairs to our bedroom. I'd already prepared for this moment. I'd packed a bag earlier in the day, and I'd made arrangements to stay with Rebecca for a while. I grabbed my bag from the closet and headed back downstairs. Marcus was standing in the hallway, blocking my path. "Where are you going?" "I'm staying with Rebecca. I can't be here right now." "Angie, please don't leave. Let's talk about this more. Let's figure this out." "There's nothing to figure out," I said. "You made your choice. Now I'm making mine." I pushed past him and walked to the front door. He followed me, still pleading, but I didn't turn around. I got in my car and drove to Rebecca's house, leaving Marcus standing in the driveway, watching me go. Rebecca was waiting for me when I arrived. She'd prepared the guest room and had a bottle of wine open on the kitchen counter. We sat up talking until late into the night, me recounting the confrontation, her offering support, and the occasional curse word directed at Marcus. "I'm proud of you," she said at one point. "It took courage to confront him like that." "I don't feel courageous," I admitted. "I feel broken." "You're allowed to feel broken," Rebecca said. "But you're not broken. You're strong. You're going to get through this." The next few weeks were a blur of lawyers, paperwork, and difficult conversations. Marcus called constantly at first, begging me to reconsider, promising he'd changed. I blocked his number. He sent emails. I deleted them without reading. He showed up at Rebecca's house. I refused to see him. My attorney, Patricia, filed the divorce papers. Marcus hired his own lawyer, and we began the process of dividing our life into separate pieces. The house, the cars, the bank accounts, the retirement funds. Everything we'd built together now split down the middle. I told our children. That was one of the hardest conversations I've ever had. Michael was angry, immediately taking my side and saying he wanted nothing to do with his father. Sarah was more conflicted, crying and asking if there was any way we could work it out. I explained that I couldn't stay with someone who'd betrayed me so thoroughly, who'd lied to me for so long. "But he's still Dad," Sarah said through her tears. "He is," I agreed, "and he'll always be your father. But he's not going to be my husband anymore. I deserve better than what he gave me." Both kids eventually understood, though it changed their relationships with Marcus. The image they'd had of their father, of our family, was shattered. That was another thing he'd taken from me, from all of us. I found out more details as the weeks went on. Jennifer was aware Marcus was married. She knew about me from the beginning. That somehow made it worse, knowing she'd consciously participated in destroying my marriage. I wondered if she felt any guilt, if she ever thought about the woman whose life she was helping to ruin. Marcus tried several more times to reconcile. He ended things with Jennifer, he claimed, though I had no way to verify that and didn't particularly care. He sent me long letters explaining how he'd been going through a midlife crisis, how he'd been scared of getting older, how Jennifer had represented a fantasy that he now realized was hollow. I read one of the letters. It was full of apologies and promises and declarations of love. But it was too late. He'd shown me who he really was, and I couldn't unsee it. The man I'd loved for 27 years, the man I'd trusted completely, had proven himself capable of sustained deception. How could I ever trust him again? 6 months after I found that receipt, our divorce was finalized. I got the house, half the retirement accounts, and a substantial portion of our savings. Marcus got his freedom and whatever future he could build without me. I changed everything about my life after that. I redecorated the house, getting rid of anything that reminded me of Marcus. I cut my hair short, something I'd wanted to do for years, but Marcus had always preferred it long. I started taking yoga classes and going to therapy. I focused on rediscovering who I was outside of being Marcus's wife. It wasn't easy. There were days when I missed him, or at least missed who I thought he was. There were nights when I cried myself to sleep, mourning the loss of the life I'd planned to live. There were moments when I questioned if I'd made the right choice, if I should have tried to forgive him. But then I'd remember that receipt, that simple piece of paper that had started it all. And I'd remember the emails, the photos, the months of lies. I'd remember how easily he'd looked me in the eye and deceived me. And I'd know I'd made the right choice. A year after the divorce, I ran into Jennifer. It was at a coffee shop downtown. I was meeting a friend, and there she was, sitting in a corner booth. I recognized her immediately from the photos I'd seen. She saw me too. For a moment, we just stared at each other. I could have caused a scene. I could have confronted her, told her exactly what I thought of her. But I didn't. I simply looked at her, saw the flicker of guilt, or maybe fear in her eyes, and walked away. She wasn't worth my energy. My friend arrived a few minutes later, and we had coffee and laughed about her kids' latest antics. Life went on. It always does. Now, 2 years after finding that receipt, I'm in a different place entirely. I'm dating again, cautiously but optimistically. I've reconnected with old friends and made new ones. I've traveled, taken up painting, and finally read all those books I'd been meaning to get to. My relationship with my children has actually gotten stronger. They see me as my own person now, not just as their father's wife. They respect the strength it took to walk away from a marriage that was hurting me. Marcus and I are cordial now, for the sake of the kids. We see each other at family events, exchange brief pleasantries, and then go our separate ways. He's dating someone new, I've heard. I hope he's learned something from what happened between us, though I doubt it. People like Marcus, people who can sustain that level of deception, rarely change fundamentally. Looking back, I can see there were signs before that receipt. Little things I dismissed or explained away. Times when his story didn't quite add up, but I gave him the benefit of the doubt. Moments when he seemed distant, but I chalked it up to work stress. The receipt wasn't the beginning. It was just the piece of evidence I couldn't ignore. That's what I want people to understand. Betrayal rarely comes out of nowhere. There are almost always signs, clues, red flags. We just have to be willing to see them, to trust our instincts, to not let our desire for everything to be okay blind us to reality. I learned that trust, once broken so completely, can't simply be repaired. Some people can forgive infidelity and rebuild their marriages. I respect that choice. But it wasn't the right choice for me. I needed to respect myself enough to walk away from someone who'd shown such profound disrespect for me and our marriage. That receipt changed my life. It was a small thing, easily overlooked, but it unraveled everything. Sometimes I wonder what would have happened if I'd just thrown it away without looking. Would I still be living in ignorance? Would Marcus still be seeing Jennifer, or would he have eventually ended it on his own? But those questions don't matter. What matters is that I found out. I saw the truth, as painful as it was, and I made the choice to value myself enough to not accept betrayal as a permanent condition of my marriage. To anyone reading this who might be in a similar situation, who might have found their own version of that receipt, I want you to know this. It's okay to be angry. It's okay to be hurt. It's okay to feel like your world is falling apart, because in a way, it is. The life you thought you had, the relationship you believed in, they're gone. You have to grieve that loss. But on the other side of that, grief is freedom. Freedom from lies, from deception, from constantly wondering if you can trust the person you're with. Freedom to rebuild your life in a way that honors who you are and what you deserve. I didn't ask to find that receipt. I didn't want my marriage to end. But once I knew the truth, I couldn't unknow it. And I couldn't stay with someone who'd proven capable of such sustained dishonesty. That receipt, that simple piece of paper from a French bistro in downtown Chicago, was the beginning of the end of my marriage. But it was also the beginning of a new chapter in my life. A chapter where I'm not just someone's wife, defined by my relationship to someone else. I'm Angela Cole, a woman who knows her worth, who won't settle for less than she deserves, who survived betrayal and came out stronger on the other side. The receipt is gone now. I threw it away after the divorce was finalized, a symbolic gesture of letting go. But I'll never forget what it represented. The moment when everything changed. The moment when I had to decide between comfortable lies and painful truth. The moment when I chose myself. And I would make that choice again, every single time. Because here's what I've learned through all of this. We teach people how to treat us. By staying with Marcus, by accepting his betrayal, I would have been teaching him that his actions had no real consequences. I would have been teaching myself that I was willing to accept less than I deserved. By walking away, I taught both of us a different lesson. I taught Marcus that actions have consequences, that you can't treat people this way and expect them to stay. And I taught myself that I'm strong enough to stand alone, that I don't need to cling to a relationship that's hurting me just because I'm afraid of being alone. I'm not alone now. I have my children, my sister, my friends. I have myself, and that's turned out to be enough. More than enough, actually. I've discovered parts of myself I'd forgotten existed, dreams I'd put on hold, interests I'd sacrificed for the sake of our marriage. The most surprising thing about life after Marcus has been the sense of peace. Yes, there was pain and grief and anger. But underneath all of that, once I worked through it, was peace. The peace of not having to wonder if I'm being lied to. The peace of not having to question every late night at work or every unexplained charge on the credit card. The peace of knowing that I'm living authentically, that the life I'm building now is real, not a facade covering up betrayal. I've also learned to trust my instincts again. During my marriage, I'd trained myself to ignore that little voice in my head that said something wasn't quite right. I'd convinced myself I was being paranoid, suspicious, untrusting. But that voice was right all along. My instincts were trying to protect me, and I'd silenced them because I didn't want to face the truth. Now I listen. When something feels off, I pay attention. When someone's words don't match their actions, I notice. I don't ignore red flags anymore, hoping they'll disappear on their own. That's one of the gifts this experience gave me, painful as it was to receive it. I've thought a lot about what makes someone capable of this kind of sustained deception. Marcus wasn't a monster. He wasn't cruel or abusive in any traditional sense. He was, in many ways, a good husband for most of our marriage. He provided for our family, participated in the kids' lives, remembered anniversaries and birthdays. But somewhere along the way, he decided that what he wanted in the moment was more important than the vows he'd made, the life we'd built, the person he'd promised to be faithful to. He compartmentalized his life, keeping Jennifer in one box and me in another, apparently believing he could maintain both indefinitely. What he didn't count on was that simple receipt. One small mistake in an otherwise carefully constructed web of lies. That's the thing about deception. It only takes one slip, one overlooked detail for the whole thing to unravel. I've wondered if Marcus ever thinks about that receipt, if he lies awake at night cursing himself for that one careless moment when he forgot to empty his pockets. If he'd thrown it away, if he'd been more careful, how much longer would the affair have gone on? Would it still be happening now? But again, those questions don't really matter. What matters is that I found out, and I made a choice about what to do with that information. I could have pretended I didn't see it. I could have looked the other way, convinced myself it was nothing, maintained the comfortable illusion of our marriage. Some people might have chosen that path, and I don't judge them for it. Everyone has to make their own decisions about what they can live with. I couldn't live with it. The moment I saw that receipt, something fundamental shifted in me. I couldn't go back to not knowing. And once I knew, I couldn't pretend. I'm not built that way. My therapist has helped me understand that the affair wasn't really about me at all. It wasn't because I wasn't attractive enough, or interesting enough, or understanding enough. It was about Marcus's choices, his character, his decision to betray our marriage. I couldn't have prevented it by being different or better. This was always about him, not about any failing on my part. That's been hard to accept. There's a part of me that wants to believe I could have done something different, that I had some control over what happened. But that's not how it works. I didn't make Marcus cheat. He made that choice all on his own. What I did have control over was my response, and I'm proud of how I handled it. I didn't stay and accept continued betrayal. I didn't lash out violently or try to destroy him. I simply gathered the facts, protected myself legally and financially, and walked away with my dignity intact. I think about the woman I was 2 years ago, finding that receipt in Marcus's pocket, and I barely recognize her. That woman was so trusting, so naive in some ways. She believed people meant what they said, that vows were sacred, that 27 years of marriage counted for something. This woman, the one I am now, is wiser, but also harder in some ways. I'm more guarded, more skeptical. I don't trust as easily as I once did. That's a loss in its own way. I miss the innocence of believing the best of people, but I wouldn't go back. That innocence came at too high a price. It made me vulnerable to betrayal, willing to overlook warning signs, too quick to give the benefit of the doubt. This new wariness, while less comfortable, protects me. It keeps me safe. I've started writing about my experience, not just for myself, but to help others who might be going through something similar. I've learned that betrayal is devastatingly common, that so many people are walking around with their own versions of that receipt, their own discoveries that shattered their worlds. If my story can help even one person feel less alone, if it can give someone the courage to face their own painful truth, then maybe something good came from all this pain. Maybe my experience, as terrible as it was, can serve a purpose beyond just my own journey. I've also learned to be grateful for the good years. Marcus and I did have good times together. We raised 2 wonderful children. We built a home, traveled, celebrated milestones. Just because it ended badly doesn't erase all the good that came before. But I've also accepted that the good doesn't excuse the bad. The fact that we had 21 good years doesn't mean I should have accepted 6 months of betrayal and lies. Both things can be true at once. We had something real and good, and he destroyed it through his choices. One of the questions people ask me most is whether I ever considered trying to work it out, giving Marcus another chance. The answer is complicated. Did I think about it? Yes, especially in those first few days when I was still processing everything. There's something comforting about the familiar, even when the familiar is causing you pain. But every time I considered it, I came back to the same realization. Trust is the foundation of a marriage, and once it's gone, there's nothing to build on. Even if Marcus never cheated again, even if he became the model husband, I would always wonder, every time he was late coming home. Every unexplained charge, every text message he received. I would always be waiting for the other shoe to drop, looking for signs of another betrayal. That's no way to live. That's not a marriage. That's a prison of suspicion and doubt. I deserve better than that. And honestly, so does Marcus. He deserves to be with someone who can trust him, and I deserve to be with someone I don't have to constantly question. I've heard that Marcus has had trouble in his subsequent relationships. Apparently, Jennifer left him a few months after our divorce was finalized. The excitement of the affair couldn't sustain a real relationship once they had to deal with actual life together instead of stolen moments in expensive restaurants and hotel rooms. I can't say I take pleasure in that, but I can't say I'm sorry either. They both participated in destroying my marriage. The consequences of those choices are theirs to bear. Marcus tried to reach out on what would have been our 30th anniversary. He sent me a long email reminiscing about our wedding day, our early years together, all the happy memories. He ended by saying he'd made the biggest mistake of his life and that he'd never stopped loving me. I read it once, felt a momentary pang of nostalgia and loss, and then deleted it. Love without respect isn't enough. Love without honesty isn't real. Marcus might have loved me in his own way, but his way involved lying to me for months, betraying our vows, and risking everything we'd built for an affair with a woman he barely knew. That's not the kind of love I want or need. I've started seeing someone new. His name is David, and he's a widower who lost his wife 3 years ago to cancer. We met at a grief support group that Rebecca convinced me to attend. We bonded over our shared experience of losing the future we'd planned, even though our losses came from very different circumstances. David is kind, honest, and emotionally available in ways Marcus never was. He talks about his feelings, asks about mine, and seems genuinely interested in building something real. It's different from what I had with Marcus, but different isn't bad. Different might actually be exactly what I need. I'm taking it slowly. I'm not ready to remarry or even move in together. I'm enjoying the process of getting to know someone new, of being courted and valued. David knows my story. I was honest with him from the beginning about what I'd been through. He's been patient with my trust issues, understanding when I need reassurance, never pushing for more than I'm ready to give. Sometimes I imagine what my life would be like if I'd never found that receipt. Would Marcus and I still be together, maintaining the illusion of a happy marriage while he continued his affair? Would he have eventually left me for Jennifer or for someone else? Would I have spent years, maybe decades, living in ignorance while my husband betrayed me? I'm grateful I found out when I did. The truth hurt, but living a lie would have hurt more in the long run. At least now I have a chance to build an authentic life, to find real love based on honesty and mutual respect. My daughter Sarah got engaged recently. She's marrying a wonderful young man she met in graduate school. When she told me, she said something that brought tears to my eyes. "Mom, watching how you handled everything with Dad taught me what it means to respect yourself. I'm not going to settle for anything less than someone who treats me with complete honesty and faithfulness. You showed me that I deserve that." Hearing that made all the pain worthwhile. If my experience taught my daughter to value herself, to demand the respect she deserves, to not tolerate betrayal, then maybe some good came from all of it after all. The wedding planning has been bittersweet. Sarah wants both her parents there, which means I'll have to spend the day in the same space as Marcus. We've agreed to be civil for her sake, to put aside our history for one day to celebrate our daughter's happiness. I've bought a beautiful dress for the occasion, something elegant and age-appropriate that makes me feel confident and attractive. I want Sarah to see me happy, thriving, proof that life goes on after betrayal and divorce. I want her to know that ending my marriage wasn't an ending at all, it was a beginning. I've also started mentoring other women who are going through divorces, especially those involving infidelity. I volunteer with a local organization that provides support services. I share my story, answer questions, and mostly just listen. So many women feel alone in their pain, like they're the only ones this has ever happened to. I can help them see they're not alone, that what they're feeling is normal, and that there is life after betrayal. One woman I've been working with found out her husband had multiple affairs over the course of their 15-year marriage. She was devastated, questioning everything about herself and her marriage. I told her what my therapist told me. This isn't about you. This is about his character and his choices. She cried and said, "But I must have done something wrong. I must not have been enough for him." I shook my head. You were enough. You've always been enough. He's the one who wasn't enough. Not enough honest, not enough respectful, not enough committed to his vows. His failures don't reflect on your worth. I hope she believed me. It took me a long time to believe it myself. Looking back on everything, I realized that the receipt was both an ending and a beginning. It ended my marriage, yes, but it also ended my willingness to accept less than I deserved. It ended my naivete about trust and fidelity. It ended a chapter of my life that, for all its good moments, was built on an increasingly shaky foundation. But it also began my journey to rediscovering myself. It began my understanding of my own strength and resilience. It began a new life where I'm the author of my own story, not just a supporting character in someone else's. I've learned that betrayal, as painful as it is, doesn't have to define you. It can refine you instead. It can teach you about your capacity for survival, your ability to rebuild, your strength in the face of devastating loss. I've learned that endings, even painful ones, create space for new beginnings. If Marcus and I were still together, I never would have met David. I never would have reconnected with old friends or discovered new interests. I never would have grown into the woman I am now. I've learned that trust is precious and should never be taken for granted, but that the breaking of trust says more about the person who broke it than the person who gave it. I wasn't foolish for trusting Marcus. He was wrong for betraying that trust. Most importantly, I've learned that I'm enough, just as I am. I don't need someone else to complete me or validate my worth. I'm complete on my own. Anything a partner adds to my life should be a bonus, not a necessity. That receipt, that simple piece of paper that started this whole journey, taught me all of that. It was an expensive lesson, paid for with tears and heartbreak and the dissolution of a 27-year marriage. But it was a lesson I needed to learn. I sometimes wonder if I should thank Marcus, in a twisted way, for being careless enough to leave that receipt in his pocket. If he'd been more careful, I might still be living in ignorance, wasting my life on someone who didn't value our marriage. Instead, his carelessness gave me back my life. I'm 55 now, and I feel more alive than I did at 30. I have plans and dreams and possibilities ahead of me. I'm not just Marcus's wife anymore, defined by my relationship to someone else. I'm Angela Cole, fully realized, completely myself, stronger for having survived betrayal and rebuilt my life on my own terms. To anyone who's ever found their own version of that receipt, who's discovered a betrayal that shattered their world, I want you to know, you will survive this. It will hurt, probably more than you ever thought possible. You'll question everything about yourself and your judgment. You'll wonder if you can ever trust anyone again. But on the other side of that pain is freedom. Freedom from lies and deception, freedom to build an authentic life, freedom to demand the respect and fidelity you deserve, freedom to discover who you are when you're not trying to hold together a relationship with someone who doesn't value what you have together. That receipt changed everything, and while I wouldn't wish this experience on anyone, I also wouldn't go back and change it now. Because it led me here, to this life I've built, to this woman I've become, and she's someone I'm proud to be. The betrayal was real, the pain was real, but so is my strength, my resilience, my capacity to rebuild and thrive. Marcus's choices couldn't break me. They bent me, tested me, hurt me deeply. But I'm still here, still standing, still moving forward, and that, in the end, is the real story. Not the betrayal itself, but what I did with it. Not the receipt that exposed the lies, but the truth I built from those ashes. Not the marriage that ended, but the life that began. I found the receipt in his pocket, and his desperate reaction, his months of lies exposed, his carefully constructed double life revealed, told me everything I needed to know. Not just about him, but about myself, about what I would and wouldn't accept, about the strength I didn't know I had, about the life I deserved and was brave enough to claim. That's the story of the receipt, but more than that, it's the story of how I survived betrayal and came out stronger on the other side. It's the story of how I chose myself, even when it was the hardest choice I'd ever had to make, and I would make that choice again, every single time.